starts and sits right here on the screen, on your screen. It's also on NFL.com/Florio if you want to see all of Mike's work. He's been doing great at picking the quarterbacks to start and sit, so let's keep that thing going here. Week 7, one Jared Goff playing against the Baltimore Ravens. Are you starting him against one of the better defenses in the league?
I didn't do so great telling you to sit Jared Goff last week, but I'm going to double down and say sit Jared Goff this week.
Sit him.
Exactly.
Thanks, Mary.
Listen and sit Jared Goff. Look, last week, I know he came through on the road. Home roads are still a split. The split is still a concern, though. 22 fantasy points per game at home, 13 on the road since last year, averaging about 7 more at home this season. But it's also about the Ravens defense. They've allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. They are in the bottom 3 in passing yards allowed amongst teams that have played all 6 games so far this season. Maybe with the buys you can't get away, but if you can, I would try to sit Jared Goff.
All right, then this will be 2 weeks. If Jared Goff outperforms this sit, then it's time to start really discussing like MVP status for one Mr. Goff. Let's go over to Sam Howell. We know he's probably going to take a few snacks, but are you still starting him?
I am starting Sam Howell. Let's hear it.
Start him.
There you go. And I'm going to give Sam Howell the start. Look, there's 6 teams on bye, lots of injuries, and Howell is a great replacement option. He has topped 18 fantasy points in 4 of his 5, even going over 25 in one of those games. And in that span, he has 3 games with over 290 passing yards, 3 games with multiple passing touchdowns, and we know he can run. Plus, he's getting in sync with his top wide receiver, kind of like Patrick and I wearing the same jacket.
Yeah, you know, it's everything, it's all in how you view it. And you could view those sacks as a gift or the fact that he's going to take his time in the pocket to get you the fantasy points that you need. As long as he's throwing touchdowns, who cares to you? Commanders fans might feel a little different. Kirk Cousins has lit it up in 2023. Still a start here?
We're in purple for the Vikings. Unfortunately, I think you should sit Kirk Cousins, and it all has to do with the matchup. There's been a trend this year where Kirk Cousins puts up his best fantasy numbers when the Vikings lose and not so great when they win. I think that gets flipped this week going up against the 49ers, who've allowed 201 passing yards per game and just 5 passing touchdowns in 6 games. Plus, they generate pressure at the 6th highest rate in the NFL. Kirko doesn't love being under pressure.
All right, so a sit for Kirk Cousins. Take note of that if he has been carrying your fantasy team. Let's go to some running backs. Brian Robinson Jr. got in the end zone last week, starting him this week.
You're going to notice a trend with the Commanders this week. I'm starting Brian Robinson Jr. because Giants. Right now, Brian Robinson Jr. has topped 13 fantasy points in 4 of his 6 games, which shows that he brings a safe floor, but he has shown us that he can get a ceiling game going in a good matchup, and that is what he gets this week, as the Giants have allowed the 3rd most rushing yards to running backs. Plus, I think there's a pretty safe chance that the Commanders could have a lead in this one and grind out the clock in the second half.
All right, we've added the caveat. It's a Giants start. So just take note as we're tracking that Giants defense around Alexander Mattison. You've got his quarterback as a sit. How do you feel about the Vikings running back?
You might notice a trend here because 49ers. I'm trying to get away from my Vikings, especially Alexander Mattison, if possible. I know that he gets a lot of volume and has shown to be a safe floor type of back, but the floor definitely gets lowered against the 49ers, who've allowed the 6th fewest rushing yards to the position and just 3 touchdowns all year. They could be in catch-up mode against a tough run defense. We saw that happen in week 2 against the Eagles. He gave you less than 5 fantasy.
Yeah, like a year-round Halloween store without a floor. The floor is non-existent against the 49ers defense. We'll go to Ramondre Stevenson. The Patriots offense is bad. Are we still starting Ramondre?
I'm going to give Ramondre another shot and tell you that you could start him this week. He came through last week in a get-right spot against the Raiders, finished as the RB6, largely because they were throwing him the ball again. 6 targets, 5 catches. He can be involved even if they are in catch-up mode against the Bills, as long as they throw him the ball. And the Bills allow 5.2 yards per carry, the 3rd highest in the league, so maybe he gets a long run or 2 in this game as well.
All right, take note of that. Despite the offense, Ramondre outperforming that. He's a start from Mr. Florio. We got more starts and sits when we come back here on Fantasy Live. If you want more right now, you go to the website, or you can just pay attention to the following graphic on your screen here on NFL Fantasy Live, because we've got starts for Mr. Florio for Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, and then sits for Derek Carr on Thursday night. Gardner Minshew, Aaron Jones, Jonathan Taylor starts, Rachaad White, and Amari DiMercado both sits for Florio in Week 7 here on the show. Florio starting with one scary Terry. It is, of course, October. It's thematic. How do you feel about the Commanders wideout?
That's thematic, and so is the fact that I said we're going to have a theme about picking on the New York Giants. So I say to start Terry McLaurin this week. Marianne, what do you think?
Start him!
Yeah, last week I had Terry as a sit because of a lack of volume. The Commanders went out and they righted that wrong, and I am doing the same thing now this week. 11 targets last week in a game where they threw just 23 times. That is a 48% target share. The upside is so high if they keep giving Terry McLaurin volume like that, especially against a Giants defense that does not scare me at all. I think Terry McLaurin with 6 teams on bye, someone you definitely want to start.
They've been throwing the ball so much over the past couple of weeks. We'll see how much that equals in fantasy points for Terry McLaurin. Jerry Jeudy, of course, undergoing a lot of public conversation after Steve Smith's comments before the game. Didn't have a lot going for him in that game. What does he do this week? He start him or he sit?
I'm sitting Jerry Jeudy. Am I alone?
Sit him!
Yeah, as Patrick got to it, Jerry Jeudy lost last week when he decided to get in a war of words with Steve Smith. I don't know why he thought that was a good idea, but he went out and gave you just 14 yards. His high game this year is 13.1 fantasy points. So the floor is low. The ceiling is like a wide receiver 3 or a flex option. And the Packers have allowed just 125 yards per game to receivers. Get him out of your line.
Yeah, a war of words with Steve is like a knife fight on a waterbed. It's just not going to work for anybody involved. Hollywood Brown got a lot of targets, didn't have a lot to show of it last week against the Rams. Are you starting Hollywood this week?
I am starting Hollywood this week.
Start him!
Like Patrick said, he's coming off of a down fantasy game, but he had 11 targets last week, and that should not be overlooked. And then you see on screen there, 16 or more fantasy points in 4 of his 5 games. He has a touchdown in 3 of those. The Seahawks, they allow the second most fantasy points per game and the third most touchdowns to wide receivers. The upside is sky high. You want to start Marquise Brown most weeks, especially a week like this where your options are very, very limited.
Yeah, a smash start. Again, so many buys, and I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this a long time because I knew the next time that we saw this man, Kyle Pitts, it could only be if he had a couple of great weeks. It happened. Is he back in your life, Mike?
He never left my life, but I told you guys to sit him for my peace of mind and the internet to not come for me. We are starting Kyle Pitts once again.
Yeah.
Look, he went out these past 2 weeks and has given you over 14 fantasy points in each of those games. In the last month, he's giving you just about 11 fantasy points per game. You know what we call that? We call that a tight end 1 in fantasy football. Arthur Smith is finally realizing good things happen when you throw the ball to Kyle Pitts and to Drake London. I expect that to continue. Even though it's a tough matchup on paper, he's been too good. There's 6 teams on bye. What are you going to do? Sit Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, imagine saying that in a couple of weeks. What are you going to do? Sit Kyle Pitts? So, Miriam, what are we confirming this?
Sit him!
Whoa, Marianne goes controversial there. We're gonna sit Kyle Pitts. All right, that's interesting for Marianne. Let's go to David Njoku, the Browns tight end. There was a quarterback injury. They played against a very good defense. Are we sitting David Njoku?
Yeah, Marianne, this is one that you could say sit him for because I think we should be sitting David Njoku. He has topped double-digit fantasy points just once, does not have 50 yards in a game this season. The Browns could be playing with the lead and running the ball a lot like they did last week against the Colts. Even with 6 teams on bye, you have better options on your waiver wire.
So disappointing considering where a lot of us drafted David Njoku coming in.
Me included.
Yeah, me as well. Zach Ertz, another Cardinal starting or sitting the longtime tight end?
Marianne, we got to end on a positive vibe here. So hit me with a stardom.
Start him!
Yes!
Exactly. Look, I know that Ertz is coming off of a down week, and we do need to monitor the usage between him and Trey McBride moving forward, but Ertz is still in the top 6 in tight end targets. He has given you at least 8 fantasy points in 4 of his 6 games. He has brought a very safe floor. There's not much of a ceiling, But with 6 teams on bye and given the state of the tight end position, that is enough for me to start Zach Ertz this week and give him another shot.
All right, another shot for Zach Ertz. Kyle Pitts never left his life, but Florio feels comfortable telling you to start Kyle Pitts. Let's get some more starts and sits. Here from Michael F. Florio, Amari Cooper, Rashee Rice both start sits for Can't Guard Mike and Josh Downs, as well as Hunter Henry and Noah Fant.